Joining us now from outside the Manhattan courthouse are Yasmin Vossoughian. Also with us, MSNBC legal analyst Charles Coleman, who's a former New York prosecutor, and Catherine Christian, former assistant Manhattan district attorney. Yasmin, get us up to speed. There was a break since they came back from that lunch break. What's happening inside the courtroom?
They're in voir dire now. So Steinglass, who's one of the attorneys for the people, is asking his questions to this potential jury. And then after that, he'll be followed by Todd Blanche, or attorneys for the former president, in which they'll get 30 minutes to ask their version of those questions to these potential jurors. I kind of want to just read for you a few exchanges that I'm seeing for you to get a sense of what's happening inside the courtroom right now, Anna. So in regards to one juror saying that they follow Donald Trump on Instagram, this is the exchange. Do you still currently follow him? I followed him years ago. This is a juror. Just generally because it was a news item when he put a tweet out, so I was aware of that. Have you seen him post anything about this case? Haven't paid much attention to it. There was another exchange with a potential female juror who talked about reading Mark Pomerantz's book. You know that Mark Pomerantz was an attorney working in the Manhattan DA's office investigating the former president, and subsequently left after Alvin Bragg became the Manhattan DA about a month into his term. This is the exchange. I'm worried that I know too much, and academically I know I have put it to the side. I'm worried that it's going to seep in some way. There are no wrong answers, Steinglass says. Can you put that aside? And the juror says, yes. These are just a couple examples, Anna, of what is going on inside this courtroom right now during this voir dire period. In just a couple of moments, I believe, in a minute or so, it's going to change over to Todd Blanche and the former president's attorneys, in which they're going to get their shot at these potential jurors. And then after that, it moves on to the period in which they decide who will get struck from this jury, if they have causal reason to strike them and or they just want to strike them. And they only have 4 chances, either side, to do that left.
Okay, so Yasmin, stay with us. Also, keep an eye on that Google Doc with the latest reporting so we can be on top of it all. Charles, today we are moving backwards. We started the day with 7 people who had been seated in this jury. Right. Now we're down to 5. Right. What does that tell you?
Well, it tells me, Anna, that this is going to be as arduous and difficult a process as many of us expected to. I think a lot of people just thought the sheer nature of what it is to be fair and impartial would make this an easy thing to do. Picking a jury by itself is not an easy thing to do. It has its numbers of hurdles and challenges. But when you're talking about a case of this nature, there are some extra complications, and you're starting to see that. The pressure in this case is not going to go down. It's only going to go up. So, for example, the juror who said, my family, my friends, they were inquiring. That sort of thing is unsurprising to me in terms of that happening. So what I'm seeing now overall is just the expected difficulty of picking the right jury for this particular case.
Catherine, do you have any concerns about how this jury selection process is going?
No, well, now we're back to reality. So what happened on Tuesday when 7 jurors were selected was remarkable. On a regular, non-high-profile case, that doesn't happen. So now we're back to what happens in the real cases that aren't high-profile. It takes some time. And the judge is at fault, and I don't like to criticize judges, but there should be no reason why a juror is asked specifically, where do you work? And where did you work before? It's enough to say, I'm a lawyer at a firm. So the reason why now we know and we can find where jurors are is because he asked those questions. And I know today he's requesting that the press not report, the specific answers. They should not have been on that questionnaire, but they were. So that's another reason why, people were able to find out where they are, these jurors, and, clearly they don't want to be bothered. But we're back to reality. It's going to take time.
Yasmin, you've been talking to people who have been inside that jury room. What more are they telling you?
I'm going to answer that question in just one moment, Anna, but I do want to comment on the conversation that you were having, because there's a real concern down here. By end of day Friday, if, for instance, miraculously, right, they're able to stack this jury fully, they're able to get the rest of the jurors in place to stack them with 12 and then 6 more alternate jurors. The worry is that they could take 2 days over the weekend, and a lot of jurors could have second thoughts, come back Monday morning for opening arguments and say, you know what, we don't want to do this anymore, as 2 jurors did today. So that is just a concern, I think, for all of us to keep in the back of our minds as we're thinking about this timeline. I did, in fact, on your show a little bit earlier today, speak with a potential juror who actually walked out after raising her hand when they said, can you be impartial? And she essentially said, no, I can't. She was part of a 96-member jury pool that walked into the court this morning after having spent the whole day here on Tuesday. And we asked her whether or not she thinks an actual impartial jury can be put together in this city for this individual, Donald J. Trump. Take a listen to what she had to say.
Do you feel like the people that you were speaking with in that jury room that you sat with all day on Tuesday, that they can put together a fair and impartial jury because of that sense of duty? Do you think that's possible?
I'm not sure about that.
Really, why?
You know, everybody has biases and, you know, stereotypes in their mind. So you have to be a really, deep and, fair person, which is very hard to do, right?
Yeah.
In order to serve as a jury. I hope they do. I mean, this is justice, right?
We all know, Anna, right, that Donald Trump is a divisive figure. That is a fact in this country. But what we didn't hear, that we heard on your show a little bit earlier today, is that when folks walked into that courtroom and realized who the defendant was, she said to me they were all kind of frozen and shocked that it was the former president of the United States. So you can kind of understand why she would say something like that. And it speaks to what Catherine was just talking about, which is the difficulty in putting together a jury in this city.
Catherine, what's your reaction to what we just heard from that woman?
She was honest, that's why she's no longer in the jury, and that's what you want. But it's true. First of all, it's the former president of the United States, and then that former president happens to be Donald Trump. So it's going to be very hard. I do believe there are people that exist that can say, you know what, whatever I feel about him, the prosecutors have not proven the case of beyond a reasonable doubt, or they have, and so they can come up with a verdict. But the defense is hoping that there's just one person on there who will not participate or who will just say, no, we can't do this to a former president. And then it's a hung jury, and believe me, that case will not be tried again anytime soon. But you will not find 12 people, I believe, to acquit. You could find 12 people to convict, but then you could also find one person or two who say not guilty, and then it's a hung jury.
Charles, do you think this juror questionnaire, the 42 questions, A, B's, and C's also included, it's very comprehensive. Is it asking the right questions in order to get that legitimate, fair, impartial jury seated?
I think it is. I mean, when you go through voir dire, you want to try and find out what are the questions you need to ask for this particular case, for the case that you're trying. Every voir dire is going to be a little bit different. There are going to be some considerations that you give in one case that you may not necessarily care about in another because of the facts. And when you look at this voir dire, it talks about, have you supported Donald Trump in terms of campaign contributions or made those contributions? Are you someone who subscribes to QAnon? Where do you get your news? These are all different considerations that you have to take into account, because regardless of whether we are talking about the crime, the law, and the facts, you still cannot ignore that the defendant is the former president. And so there is a politicized nature to the case, even if the prosecution itself is not something that's being politicized. And I think that trying to weed out people who might be influenced along those lines is something that this questionnaire does very well, which is why it's used in this case. So yes, I do think it's the right questions. I don't think, to Catherine's point, there's a need to go into specifics around where someone works or things that might be overly identifying. But if there's something that's going to give you a greater level of insight into someone's political leanings in a way that might allow an attorney on further voir dire to probe and then find out, is this going to prevent you from being fair and impartial, then I think it's appropriate.
There are actually 2 attorneys who have been seated as part of this jury so far. Catherine, does that surprise you? And do you feel like those members of the jury would look at the evidence in this case differently than just an average person?
Well, there are lawyers and there are lawyers. A bankruptcy lawyer knows nothing about criminal law. A criminal lawyer knows nothing about bankruptcy law. It was always my practice. I'm never putting a lawyer in a jury. However,
why is that?
It's because, stereotypes. You think too much, you're going to be questioning, particularly if you're a trial lawyer. I would never do that. I think of myself, I would be sitting there going, object, why isn't he objecting? I wouldn't be able to help myself. But if you have 5 people and 4 of them are really horrible and the one who's okay is the lawyer, that's the one you're going to pick.
What about you?
Absolutely. Catherine and I, both having practiced at that level, share many of the same instincts. And there's no way that you're putting someone, typically, who's an attorney on a jury case of yours. Another one is if you find out someone has hobbies and it's a case involving police, for example, meaning that there are a lot of police witnesses, you might ask them, what are your hobbies? Do you watch a lot of TV? Yes. Oh, what do you watch? I watch Law and Order. I watch CSI. Get them out of here. Those are not people you want to enjoy. Why? Because they're expecting a level of forensic science and all kinds of other experimentation that does not take place on a normal basis. And oftentimes they can go into a jury room and make themselves smarter than they actually are, which can be a disaster for the conversations with your other jury. So when you are making these sort of assessments, Anna, you do rely on stereotype. You do rely on what you know and then what you've seen in practice over time around people, because you are making snap judgments around strangers. But some of those are just rooted in the information that you get from the questionnaires and from the voir dire, which is why this is such an important process.
All right, guys, thank you so much. Yasmin Vossoughian, Charles Coleman, and Catherine Christian. Appreciate all of you. Please stay close.
Hey, everyone. MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.